Right, to adapt or not to adapt? That is the question. That's what we're talking about today. So what I've got in my hands, this is my Canon EOS R, and this is my go-to camera for vlogging and photography as well. You'll see straight away that I've got a gigantic microphone on the top of the camera. So if you're not into video, then you could take this away and that becomes irrelevant. So I'll check that over there. So if you're just doing still photography, this is what your setup's going to look like. EFS lens, adapter, mirrorless Canon camera. Now, taking a step back, when I first got into photography 10 or 15 years ago, everybody said, make sure you spend good money on lenses because they're a good investment and they hold their value better than cameras. So when I had a Canon 5D Mark II, as soon as they bring out a Mark III, the value of the Mark II goes down. But the advice was, spend good money on the lenses, they'll hold their value. Fast forward to 2020 and I've got a whole collection of EF lenses, which is good. That's the sort of thing I would have boasted about a long time ago, but now that Canon have shifted to mirrorless and they've got a new RF mount, now all of a sudden I'm stuck with all these EF lenses and their value is starting to go down. So the problem I've got is I invested in glass, I took people's advice and I invested in lots of good lenses, and now Canon have changed their mount to an RF mount. So in terms of performance, I went from a Canon 5D Mark III, which is a DSLR, to an EOS R, which is essentially a 5D Mark IV body in a mirrorless camera. And the performance of this EF lens and all of my EF lenses, I've got no problem with the performance whatsoever. I also got the opportunity to try some EF lenses on the new Canon R6 and the R5, thanks to my friend Gordon at Camera Labs. And I have to say, the EF lens, I put a 100mm macro lens on it, the L series version, which is typically, it's a fantastic lens, but it's a bit slow at focusing. I put that on the R6, and my God, did it get an absolute boost in performance. The focusing capability of that old EF lens was just turbo. It's unbelievable. So EF lenses on the Canon mirrorless system is as good as it was on the DSLR, and on the new R6 and the R5 it's way better. So EF lenses are better on mirrorless cameras than they are on the older digital SLRs. And if it's not obvious, I'm filming this outside. I've got like an outside rig, and my OCD, hopefully I've got this symmetrical, like my OCD had to have this line bang in the middle of the shot, and unfortunately I built this fence behind me and it's not perfectly straight, so framing this up in camera, freaking nightmare. Anyway, back to the video. My biggest gripe with adapting EF lenses to this EOS R is the aesthetics, because the EOS R is not black, it's like a gunmetal grey, which is really nice. It's slick, it's kind of like the direction that phones have gone in and iPads and everything. It's gunmetal grey, which looks really slick. But the old EF lenses, they're black, and they just don't sit well on the camera. Not to mention the fact that as soon as you add an adapter, that's another inch in old money on your camera, and it just looks a bit ridiculous. Let me show you an example of a lens that I absolutely loved on my DSLR, but not so much on my mirrorless camera. So here we've got my beloved 50mm 1.2 lens, and I'll put it on my EOS R and I'll show you what the problem is. So in terms of performance, this 50mm 1.2 performs better now on this camera than it did on my 5D Mark III. However, it just doesn't look right. Take a look at this. The adapter is smaller than the lens itself, so it's kind of camera steps into the adapter and then it steps back out again, and it just doesn't look right. So even if this performs really well optically and in terms of focusing and everything, it just looks naff. First world problems, I know, but that's one of the issues with adapting. It just doesn't look right. This isn't just a Canon thing. I've got a Sony a7 III and I've got the Sigma MC11 adapter, and I can put my Canon lenses onto my Sony, but once again it just doesn't look right. Okay, so I think you get the message. Aesthetically, I don't think the EF lenses sit well. Some of them look okay, but some of them look a bit clunky. I don't think that this is a very nimble setup, and this is probably not what they wanted when they started designing mirrorless cameras. You won't see something like that on a Canon advert, will you? Let's talk about the big issue with RF lenses. They are ludicrously expensive, and I mean, they've got a few really nice lenses out, but this 50mm 1.2, they've brought out a new RF 50mm 1.2. That makes this lens look tiny. I mean, that's a gigantic lens. And the new RF lenses, yes, they are really good, but I never complained about the optical quality of any of this EF equipment. So I like to shoot with primes, and at the moment, the Canon RF lens lineup just doesn't have any affordable primes that are fast. That's why I haven't just sold all of my equipment and just moved completely over to RF. There is also the fact that the EF lens lineup is vast, and the RF lens mount hasn't caught up yet. So for example, I've got the 135 f2, I use that all the time for portraits. They haven't made an RF equivalent. I've also got a 24mm tilt shift lens, and they haven't made the RF equivalent of this. So even if I did go out and buy all of their RF lenses, I still couldn't replace what I already have. And for those of you that have still got a DSLR but you're thinking about moving over to mirrorless, this EOS R here can take RF lenses, EF lenses, and EFS lenses. Yes, it will crop in as soon as you put an EF lens on, but this Canon here can take 3 different lens types. Name another camera that can take 3 different types of lenses. So there is a point to this video, and that is that I've finally caved in to buying an RF lens. Oh, and if you've never heard of MPB, I think they're called MPB Photographic, they sell second-hand camera equipment. This video is not sponsored by them, but I buy all of my second-hand camera gear from them. I've never bought a camera from them, but I think this lens came from them, that lens came from them, the lens that I'm filming you with, the Sigma 18-35, that came from MPB. So MPB I can highly recommend if you're in the market for a second-hand lens. So some poor soul has spent full money on this RF lens. They've traded it in, they probably lost half the money. I don't know why they didn't want this lens, but I'll take care of it for them. My first RF lens. It's a small one, you can tell it's a small nifty one from the box. That's right, you guessed it. I went for the 35mm f1.8, which ticks a few boxes for me. It's got image stabilization, quiet focusing, so I can use it for video as well. And if you compare this to the other RF primes, this is cheap. But I finally caved in and got myself an RF lens. So if you're a Canon user and you've got a DSLR and you're thinking about moving over to mirrorless, but you're questioning whether or not your existing glass, your existing lenses are going to adapt well, the answer is yes, they will adapt very well. In terms of performance, you will be happier than you are right now, and you get to keep all of your lenses. But a year in, you can't ignore the allure of the RF lenses. They are shiny. You'll be using your brand new shiny camera and you'll be adapting your old dirty lenses on it, and there will come a time when you think, I really, really need to buy an RF lens now. So it's been a year for me. I've held out for quite a long time, and I've finally caved in to getting an RF lens. Until Canon come out with some affordable, fast primes, I'm just sticking with this one 35mm f1.8, and I'm a happy bunny adapting my older lenses. This was just a short, sweet video to help you manage your own expectations, because if you're investing in the Canon mirrorless system, right now you can get the RP, you can get the R, the R6 and the R5 are coming out soon. I'm just helping you manage your expectations, because you will end up buying RF lenses eventually. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video.